Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming presented by Codename Entertainment and TakeThis.org. Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games or later on your favorite podcast service. Normally, Mitra Jordan, Raffael, Boccamazzo, aka Dr. B, talk about mental health in these unprecedented times as well as how gaming affects us. But today we have another guest with us, and it is Dr. Kowert. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Yeah. If you have any questions, you can put them into the chat that Treavor Bettis, will ask them later in the show. And our topic today is going to be gaming and social connections. But before we get to that, Dr. Kowert, who are you for the fine people who may not know?
Hi, I'm Rachel, Dr. Rachel Kowert. I am the research director for Take This, where I work with the lovely Dr. B. I'm also a science content creator on YouTube, Zeitgeist, where I talk about the effects of games, how games impact us physically, socially, and psychologically.
And who is the other mysterious stranger here who I forgot to even say in the intro thing?
No, you talked about me.
Oh, okay. Well, I meant,
made
like,
sure of it.
I don't. Yeah, go ahead. Who are you?
All will talk about me.
Remember me.
Remember? No, Dr. B stands for brain. I try to take over the world every night. No, I'm Raffael Boccamazzo, better known as Dr. B for long Italian name reasons, and I am the clinical director over at Take This. While I am a non-practicing doctor of clinical psychology, I am also an expert on the applied use of role-playing games in clinical and learning settings, and I also host body doubling study sessions on my own Twitch channel 4 times a week. They're quiet and chill, and I'm around. I do stuff.
Those body doubling streams, so good. So yeah, we're gonna talk about gaming and social connections today. Where do y'all want to start with that?
Well, so Treavor.
Yes.
So Treavor and Rachel, tell you what, I hear this thing I all the time, usually from parents, teachers, medical professionals, that real relationships are only face-to-face. Now, I, of course, completely believe that as a gamer.
I've heard that so much through my life.
No, it's so obnoxious. This idea that if you're gaming with people, it's not a real relationship in an online space, because somehow it's not social.
Yeah, like it I think I've told this one on the show before, but like my grandfather was very much a believer in that, where he's just like, you're just wasting your time with those video games. Like, those people like aren't real friends or anything like that. And so like I gave him a test one day where I talked to, he's like, what happened in school today? And so I told him about some stuff that was happening with 2 of my friends. And I went, okay, one of those was an online friend and one of those was at my school. Which one was it?
Mic drop.
Yeah, he still said stuff afterwards, but it was still fun to do at the time. I felt really cool.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, especially like you said, as gamers. If you ask people who play games, they would never agree with that statement, because we're well aware that the people we play games with are valuable social relationships. I think it's a lot of times there's just this barrier between, you don't really know who they are because you don't see their face. Well, maybe I do see their face. Maybe we play on Zoom. Because you don't know where they live. Well, maybe I do know where they live, because we talk about lots of different things. So yeah, I think that the boundaries are so fluid these days. It's really not accurate to describe them as being completely different or completely separate relationships.
Well, and one of the things, so story time.
Story time.
Dr. Kowert and I have now known each other for a couple of years, and I was very aware of Dr. Cowert's work before meeting her face to face. I won't lie, I fanboyed a little. And the one of the things in several of her books that I've talked about with parents and teachers, etc., many times is the idea of social capital, and how regardless of whether you're engaged with people face to face in meet space, or whether you're engaging with people via an online medium, like Treavor and I have been talking now for like 2 weeks about how I need to start playing Destiny 2, and I'm looking forward to that, to doing group raids. And regardless of whether it's collaborating on those group raids or being in school and them letting me down on a group project, I'm gaining social capital. But Dr. Kowert, what exactly is social capital?
Yeah, social capital is a fancy word for the resources that we acquire in relationships. Relationships are give and take. We acquire new information. You know, Dr. B teaches me about obscure music. We acquire emotional support. Emotional support, social support. You know, if you're having a bad day, you can talk to your friends, and they provide tangible favors. So this idea of new information, social emotional support, physical resources, this is all under the umbrella of social capital. This is the things that we gain in exchange in our relationships. So when we talk about online versus offline, there's always an argument that online friends are less able to provide that. Mostly the argument being they can't provide tangible favors, like they can't help you move, to which I always say, no one wants to help me move. It doesn't matter where I know them from. Right?
So, I mean,
what do you mean? Real quick, I'm not going to lie. I've really loved the times that I've been the friend who's online and someone's like, oh, yeah, now I've got this big move. And I'm like, oh, and they can't ask me for help. Yes.
Maybe it's a benefit. Maybe it's a benefit instead of a deficit.
Yes. I do also want to say real quick, I apologize again, video watchers. The desync is happening again. Don't know what's happening. I lowered the resolution. I'm out of ideas. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Can we send up the XSplit signal?
You know what? I'm going to write that down. I'm going to contact XSplit support today and see what the heck is going on. Continue. Yeah. I apologize.
Well, okay. So, but Dr. Kowert, you talk about resources in social relationships. And first of all, it's early enough and my brain is bouncing all over the place that I'm like wood in Catan, and I like get things from people. But like in terms of actual resources, like interpersonal resources, there's two things that you've talked about in the past and talk about frequently. And one of them is bonding capital. How do games help us bond? I ask rhetorically.
Yeah. Yes, you're bringing up. So there's two branches. The other one you're going to bring up is bridging. So there's bridging,
because that's what I wrote down.
Yes, those are the two kinds of social capital. Bonding social capital is close-knit friendships, your closest friends, the people you call in the middle of the night when you're sad. Those kinds of relationships. Bridging are more co-workers, somebody you might call for a favor now and then, someone you might talk to at the water cooler, but not necessarily somebody who you would call when you're having like a really bad day. Need that strong support. So this is the way that friendships are often differentiated. Now, there's long been an argument that online friendships promote more bridging than bonding social capital. So they're more loose, diffuse networks than like really close relationships. But if you look deeper into the research, you find that online relationships can very easily be both. Of course, there's more bridging. You know, I have 150 people in my guild, right? I'm not going to know them all really well, but there are 3 that I know very, very well, right? So that would fall more into the bonding.
In your first book, in the video game debate 1, I if I recall correctly, wow, I did not recall correctly. And earlier, this was the Bonut Dough Tie.
Bonut Dough Tie.
befuddled words a bit. But I think in your first book, the Video Game Debate 1, you called them connectedness versus intimacy.
Right. Because it is about the level of, it's mostly about emotional bonding and emotional support. So I feel very connected to the entire community at Take This. Everybody on the Discord, I have a sense of connection with them, but my sense of intimacy is not the same for everybody in the Take This Discord. I'm very close to Dr. B. I've known him for several years. If I was having a bad day, I would call him, but I wouldn't necessarily call, everyone in the network of the Take This Discord.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's another good way of kind of differentiating. I like to think of it as kind of, when I think of networks, I'm really imagining like this graphic of just like spider lines going everywhere. Like those are our networks, right? When we play games, but our close friendships, Dunbar's magic number, 7 ± 2. We have 7 ± 2 close, intimate friends at any given time. Because that's about as much as we can handle and maintain.
That
with
varies depending on who plays certain games with who.
If you play Mario Party with Dr. B, he's out of that.
No, we're already
here.
I told you I was going to bring it up.
This is foreshadowing for later in the show.
I'm a monster.
I let you back in.
Hold on, chat. I don't. Okay, I'm just. You know what? I'm going to own this. I'm going to own this ahead of time.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Dr. Cowert's going to tell you some things, and they're probably true.
They are true.
Things were said. Things I regret. I am a monster. All right. When it comes to Mario Party.
The moral is, don't play Mario Party with Dr. B. That's the takeaway.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And the idea of trying to do some sort of charity stream with Dr. B to play Mario Party with him has totally crossed my mind now.
Well, you should, to be honest. So we did a 24-hour stream earlier in the week, and I played Mario Party with Dr. Sarah Hayes, who's a clinical contributor to Take This. And it did come up that Dr. B would be unavailable during that time, and I was like, as he should be, because I'm not playing with him. So
I can see how red I'm turning.
It's pretty.
So
it's a
good.
beautiful shade of red. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God. All right. No, I may have threatened to eat people's souls.
There were like threats in Klingon. Okay, do you want to be honest?
They weren't in Klingon because I can't speak Klingon, but they were definitely.
No, when you
Klingon
get to that level of anger, Dr. B, you just start talking in Klingon.
So, in speaking in tongues, yes.
God.
And
Yeah,
Grumpy
no,
Cloud
I
in the
think
chat is right.
I think I cursed our friend's family down to the 3rd generation, saying they dishonored the Empire, something to that effect.
It was something like that.
But this is how memories are made with friends.
I'm not sure if they're good memories.
But no, you were talking about how like the different types of friendships you have with people online. Like I know for me, like if I know someone's like actual name, like, and if I hear someone say like, oh, I've got Brandon that I can bring in, I know that they know each other well enough for that. If someone's just like, oh, I've got freaking Death Elite awesomeness. It's just like, all right, well, we'll see how they are.
Right.
Yeah. And so like, I do think that there's an interesting way of talking about friends online that is a little bit different, because like if it's in person, it's just like, oh yeah, I've got John coming to hang out with us tonight. Well, there's like, well, I don't like, okay, I don't know from the way that you're talking, I can't decipher how well you know John or anything. But online, again, if you know their name versus their gamer tag, that to me gives me some sort of indication of your level of friendship.
Yeah, different set of social cues.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and one of the things I want to throw out there is, especially for people who struggle with various things like social anxiety, significant social anxiety, agoraphobia, neurodiversity, online methods of communication can often facilitate more healthy forms of communication. Like as an example, for a lot of us who are on the autism spectrum, the pressures of real time, in the moment reciprocity, especially emotionally, can be an extreme challenge. And so for a lot of us on the spectrum, what are called asynchronous forms of communication, essentially like you text me, I have a moment to think about it, I can process what I'm feeling without getting overloaded and respond back in a more thoughtful way, as opposed to that very quick-paced, more amorphous, real-time form of communication. And so I'm going to even go so far as to say to downplay the value of online relationships is subtly ableist.
Interesting. And also, I want to also throw in there, I think games are a specific ecosphere in this as well, because games not only provide asynchronous communication, they provide a perpetual topic of conversation.
Yes.
So for people who have difficulties thinking of like what to say, I always can be like, right. It says, yeah, exactly. I always can be like, do you have the potions? What quest are you on? Like, there's always something to talk about. And that is really facilitating for people who don't necessarily have that fluidity in their speech.
Yeah, I'm, you know, I've talked about being autistic so many times on this show that one of the things that's easier for me socially is activity-based social interactions, because
not Mario Party.
That was easier for me.
What?
But yes.
What?
You're right.
You ever had a bow tie? You ever had a guy in a bow tie threaten your soul?
Is it because it provides a topic of conversation? Is that why? Or
well, that it's a purpose-driven thing. How can I put this? Me having a role and a purpose going into something is a lot easier for me to know the rules of the social interactions. Like me going to, it's so weird that a lot of folks who see me at conventions and have only met me in a convention context, they really think I'm extroverted. I am not. I am gregarious, sure, but when I'm at a convention, I have a role. I'm Dr. B. If I go to a party and I'm there to help them cook, I have a role. I have a purpose. If I'm playing a game with somebody and they're there to hang out and play games, there's a role, there's a purpose. That's what we're doing. If you drop me off in a social interaction and just say, hey, be yourself, I'm going to panic because I don't know what the rules are.
My immediate thought every time that happens to me is IT crowd of just casual.
Yeah, no, yes,
yeah.
The dinner party. It's so true.
Yeah.
And games as an activity-driven form of socialization offer a purpose and a context for all of these interactions that is externally generated, that I don't have to struggle to like make small talk or whatever.
Right.
So someone in the chat is Chamber X77 says, I've been called an extrovert as well, which tells me that my masking is working, lol. 100%. Anytime someone's just like, you're such an extrovert, I'm just like, I'm tricking you so well.
Well, you know what? There was another comment that I see come up from Valerie, and I want to address this. Isn't that escapism from your true self? No, it's not. 100% it's not.
Yeah.
Because all of this stuff comes from me. And if we really want to get into it, whatever we define as our true self is completely subjective. And the truth is that, and I've talked about this before, I struggle with a moderate degree of alexithymia, which means if you think about empathy as being able to tune into the emotional experiences of other people, I can't tune into the emotional experiences of myself. I don't hide what I'm feeling from others. I don't know what I'm feeling. It's just loud.
Yeah.
And open-ended questions for a lot of people on the spectrum are devastatingly vague because we don't have context. And games give a context. Essentially, they provide a social framework under which we can socialize. A lot of us can socialize more easily.
The reason I laughed at the beginning of that is Joe Malo said in parentheses, one imposter remains.
I'm not allowed to play that either.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
I'm competitive.
So I guess like next question that I want to go to that we have on our doc here is just, how does this happen? Like what is bringing this about with gaming socializing versus in real life socializing.
Yeah, I think there's just a general, like, what's bringing about like the misperception that it's less valuable, or what's bringing about.
Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, I think it's just a general misunderstanding, you know, of what happens in a game for people who don't play them. Because as we said before, anybody who plays them knows they're incredibly social. But you think about from the outside in, I did a lot of my early work in my PhD looking at the stereotype of gamers. And there's the stereotype that gaming is a lonely, isolated activity. Now, from the outside in, you can see how that connection is made. You see a person with headphones, you don't hear anything, alone at a computer, right? But you don't realize they're connected to a world of loads of other people.
I mean, by that definition, what we're doing right now is a lonely thing.
Right.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, someone walking by who doesn't know what I'm doing, and if I'm not talking, right, unless it's me, like, if it's a first-person shooter, I might be saying expletives. But other than that, if I'm concentrating, I might not be talking. And it looks like a singular activity. But I think that's where the stereotype came from, right? That people who don't have social abilities or gravitate towards it because they're unable to socialize in other contexts, which is bollocks. It's not true. And second, that it's isolating.
She went to school in England, folks.
Sometimes it comes out.
That is the first time bollocks has been used on this show. Well done. No, that does make sense. Like, yeah, like I just, like, back with my grandfather, like, I didn't like that he had that opinion of the online friends that I had, but I understood it because, yeah, to him, I'm sitting in my room alone on my bed with a controller in my hand. It does not look like I am socializing in any way, shape, or form. And when I'm yelling at people, it just seems like I am, you know, just screaming at my TV.
Which you do. I mean, come on. Who hasn't screamed at their TV?
It's true.
Who hasn't broken a mouse playing a first-person shooter? Tell me.
I have not.
Not just me.
Whom's amongst us?
Maybe it's just me.
No, I feel like we're going into like Reverend Lovejoy territory. And whomst amongst us have not broken their mouse in a fit of rage.
Now I want Reverend Lovejoy to just talk about gaming, but like still in the sermon way. Yeah, that'd be great.
And then Mario did begat another mushroom.
Okay. So I think. Oh no, go ahead.
I was like, Dr. Goose says games are inherently social, and I love that point because I was talking to somebody not that long ago about Twitch, and they were saying what a strange phenomenon this is. People watching other people play games. And I was like, I have an older brother. I did this all day long in my childhood. It was just me watching one other person. So yeah, it's always been a social thing.
I'm sorry. I always love the people who say how strange it is. And then these are the same people who are like, hey, you want to go watch the baseball game? And I'm like, I have questions.
You mean the same people that when their team makes a bad play says we really should have run the ball there? And I go, you were not on the field.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, it's the same thing. There was a meme I saw 20 years ago that back in the early days of the internet, that was one of those demotivational things, and it was a bunch. It was one of those demotivational posters, and it was a bunch of dudes with their shirtless at a football game with all of them spelling out individual letters on their chests of their team, and the caption was just D&D. The caption was sports. D&D for the guys who used to beat up those of us who played D&D.
I went over to a buddy's house one time while he and his brother-in-law were picking their fantasy football drafts. And I went, and his brother-in-law was doing his, and my buddy was done. And I said, okay, explain fantasy football to me. I do not understand this. And so he explains it out to me. I went, oh, this is like D&D, but the players are the dice. And his brother-in-law went, no, it is not like that.
It is exactly like that.
Exactly like that.
It is exactly like that. But here's the weird thing. I've had those guys look at me strangely, and I'm like, that is a crunchier rule system than even GURPS. All right.
Yes.
So I'm sorry. The 5th edition, easier to play. I will teach you in 10 minutes.
But before I had it explained to me, I had another friend that like came to hang out with us, and he gets there and immediately starts talking about his fantasy football draft and like how good his team did and stuff like this. I was like, oh yeah, no, that was just like last week when Kyle got this critical hit against the Red Dragon they were fighting at the end. And he goes, what? And I went, now you know how I feel.
Very good.
But we brought this up in the pre-production meeting, this idea that and I know that Dr. Cowert's going to speak to this extensively, the idea of there are different modes of play. In developmental psychology, we talk about different levels of evolving play. Okay. And there's a difference between what's called parallel play, which I love, and cooperative play, which also I like. But even in playing single player MMOs, you are playing with other people, and it's called Alone Together. Dr. Kowert, take it.
Yes, in the research community, I would say a famous research paper called Alone Together, and it is exactly that. So when we play online games, this was particularly about either EverQuest or World of Warcraft. It was in the height of the MMO popularity. We are surrounded by other players who we know are there. So even if we're not interacting with them, we're being social, we're playing alone, but together. And it's the same idea with Twitch. So there was a research study that came out at the end of 2020 about how Twitch has been a social and emotional boon to people during COVID quarantine, above and beyond things like YouTube or television. The idea being it has the sense that someone else is there. Someone is live. There's another person right here, right now with me. And it gives you that sense of social and emotional comfort, knowing that you're alone together.
Yeah.
And I see Dr. Goose in the chat.
Yes.
And I see Dr. Goose chiming in with points that we're missing. And I'm going to totally out Dr. Goose. Dr. Goose is our community manager at Take This, Dr. Kelly Dunlap, and also probably the greatest authority in the world, and that's not hyperbolic given her credentials and her research, on game design and mental health.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have been blessed by additional knowledge within the chat of a literal world authority.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Dunlap. No, the gaming Alone Together thing like really hits home for me. Like I remember playing Star Wars Galaxies back in the day. That was the first MMO I ever played, and I like the most wild interaction I've ever had in MMO was literally the first one I ever had. I made my character. My cousin was explaining how I was playing on his computer. He's explaining to me how to do everything. I made my character. It dropped me in some world. I don't remember where. And I just started walking out and going places. And I'm like, it's Star Wars. I love Star Wars. It's so cool. And then a lizard popped out and just started murdering me. Just like, it was this tiny little like compy thing. And it was just like, die. You're going to die now. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't know how anything worked. And all of a sudden, another player shows up and kills the thing. And I was like, oh, whoa. And so my cousin showed me how to talk in game. And so I typed it and said, thank you. And they responded to me in Spanish. And it was one of the most wild moments for me where I was just like, this is so, like, that was where I got what an MMO was, where I'm just like, this person's in another part of the world and just saved me from this small little monster thing. I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, MMOs have a very special place in my heart. I'm doing a video in a couple months. I've already recorded it, but it comes out in a couple months on Zeitgeist about my experience with MMOs coming at a difficult time in my life. And that's when the research article about Twitch was about during COVID quarantine and a difficult time in your life. Being able to be in a space where, it's populated by other people in the world. At 2 a.m., you can log on and there are people there to play with, to interact with, to talk with. It's pretty amazing. It is the farthest thing from antisocial.
Well, and I think I saw this brought up in the chat a little earlier, that even single player games, and this harkens back to like my childhood, where again, autistic, I didn't understand my peers, and video games were really my respite. The video games were something I understood. I still have the first 70 issues of Nintendo Power. That's just something I brag about.
Which you should.
But what was cool is that even the single player video games gave me a touchstone to talk to other people about something, because I remember when my classmates and I like when Mario 3 came out, our minds were just blown. And we were, we'd come to class the next day and like, dude, did you figure out how to fly with the raccoon tail? What? Or, dude, did you know that if you get the Tanuki Mario, you can turn into a statue?
Oh man, the recess like social part of games back in the day for me was just what, like, all of the Pokemon rumors. My God, just like, my uncle works at Nintendo and told me that if you trade these Pokemon,
right. And even those single player games gave us this cultural touchstone and cultural connection with the people. In fact, it was about the only thing I could actually reliably talk to the people in my class about, because I didn't understand the rest of the stuff they were going on about.
Yeah.
Even today, can I just mention, like, today, that's still so important. Like, I have a lot of parents who don't want their kids to play games or whatever it might be. But a point I often bring up is that exactly, it is of cultural relevance for your children to be able to go to school and talk about Destiny 2 or Halo or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If they're the appropriate developmental age to be playing that according to parental guidance.
Yes. Yes, heartbeat. Follow the age ratings.
Let's take a quick break to remind our viewers and listeners of our disclaimer, and then we will be right back. Stay tuned.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about this, and we've shared a couple of personal experiences, and I would be remiss if I didn't give us a chance to talk about a very specific personal experience, maybe expanding on that Mario Party part. So essentially, like, what are these personal experiences that we've had that like kind of show us, like, I've talked about a few of them that I've had, like the Star Wars Galaxies one, but like earlier you were talking about Dr. B, I believe it was you that was talking about like being able to try out different personalities and stuff like that, and that was 100% me. Like, Halo 2 Online let me figure out who I was. High school did not. Like, I did not know or understand how to find my personality in person at school, but when I was online, I could try stuff out and be like, okay, don't do that. That makes you a jerk. Okay, this one worked. Okay, this style of comedy gets more laughs than this style of comedy. Don't do that style. And like, by the time I hit college, like, I was a completely, like, personality-wise different person than who I was in junior year before I started playing Halo 2 online. And like that's one that always sticks out to me as a way that like socializing and gaming can have really good effects on you. I think it had a good effect. I think I'm pretty cool, but I'm pretty biased as well.
I think you're cool. Games are great social learning grounds, right? And it doesn't have to be a role-playing game. A lot of times we talk about like role-playing games where I tried on a different personalities, different genders, different whatever it might be, but even without that level of avatar customization to be able to do it, so what's the word, so literally trying on different personas, games are great places for trying new social skills, or can I make friends if I have this kind of humor, or if I say this thing, people don't want to play with me, so maybe we won't act that way. But it's great for that, for testing and having little real world repercussions. Like if I alienate, Squirrel Girl 4, it doesn't matter, right? I don't know her. But I can then take these skills into the
Who
real
in the
world
multiverse
and
is
them.
Squirrel Girl for?
I know. I was thinking about the multiverse.
Oddly enough, she's actually the 74th incarnation of Squirrel Girl 4.
Now I have a song by Kirby Crackle going through my head, the Great Lakes Avengers.
But no, well, actually, one of the funny parts of it is my voice became like this when I was like 16. So like I was playing Halo and they're like, "You're a 30-year-old man." I'm like, "I am not. I don't even have my driver's license yet."
Is it like that scene from The Simpsons where Homer is singing Ave Maria? Ave Maria.
It was exactly like that.
It just happened one day.
Yeah, no, like people, like there were people who like treated me like I was an adult. Like they would listen to me because the way I sounded. I'm just like, that's weird. Like I don't know what I'm doing here.
One of the things I actually want to point out, and this harkens back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, is that I have trouble with small talk. I really do. I mean, it's not shocking. A lot of folks on the spectrum do. I struggle with it because it's by definition talking about things of no importance. I understand the social role of it on an academic level. It's a way of figuring out, is this person a safe person to disclose more vulnerable information to, and we sort of have this escalating response pattern of self-disclosures. We make a little bit of a self-disclosure socially, someone meets us with that level of self-disclosure, one person does it again, and then we see where it sort of tops out. And if one person goes too far and the other person doesn't meet them, well, that's kind of the level of friendship you're at that point. But when it comes to games, and Dr. Kowert has talked about this to us, Dr. Kowert has talked about this in her books, there is increased self-disclosure. It's in online formats. And I have gotten to know some of the best friends in my life online first, because we could just skip the small talk. They went and they just started talking about things that were of actual importance to them. And because they were of actual importance to them, I was really interested. And I could pay attention and I could ask about these things and have these meaningful conversations about things of actual vulnerable importance to them through this online environment. And then when we met up in person, yeah, can I tell you what their favorite color is? No, but can I tell you their fears and hopes and dreams? Sure. And that's where I mean, I might not know the mundane details about their life, but I know the stuff that matters to them.
I want to point something out in the chat to kind of explain something. So Valerzy said, in my opinion, it's a slippery slope when you say it's okay to dehumanize. They said Schoolgirl 74. It was Squirrel Girl 4. Squirrel Girl. As a disposable test object. That's not what we're saying. Like, okay, like think of it this way. In high school when I was playing Halo, I might have said something like, "Oh, like just try to start a topic, try to start a conversation." Like, I absolutely freaking hate Naruto. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's just it's terrible. And someone goes, "Wow, that's my favorite show ever," and I really don't like the way that you just came off talking about that. I'm gonna leave this chat. That has taught me something, that's not the way to start a conversation. That's not the way to talk about something. That person left. And what I mean is, like, yes, that is, I have a moment where I'm just like, I don't like that I did that. I'm going to learn a lesson from it, but I'm probably never going to see that person again. I'm never going to interact with that person again. Whereas like if I did that at school and they were in my class and sitting next to me, every day, that person's out there just be like, I can't believe you freaking hate Naruto, you jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. And it's also too, like online, I can get on and talk about a problem I have with my best friend or a struggle I'm having with my boyfriend. And I don't have to worry that Squirrel Girl is going to take that information and turn back around and go to my best friend and tell them, Rachel was saying this stuff, whatever it might be. So it provides a safe social testing ground, right? Either this is not the way to make friends, or this is a place where I can practice these different levels of self-disclosure and have a safe space where I can talk about things where I know that it's safe and it's going to stay and not impact me in other areas of my life.
And again, I want to point out that for a lot of people, and in many respects, I'm one of them, these online forms of communication are in fact not analogous in terms of our skill sets to real life, quote unquote, offline life. They are actually easier because of the different strengths and weaknesses of my social communication abilities being autistic. I have a stronger presence, I think, a more subtly nuanced presence when I'm talking to people online, as opposed to, I struggle face to face with things. I need time to process, and that's true with a lot of people. So I want to again throw this out there to people that let's not denigrate online forms of communication as being lesser than, because for some of us it's where we shine.
There's legitimately a friendship that I've had with this person for over 10 years now. We've never spoken like voice wise. We've only spoken through text. We met on the Red versus Blue forums, and he and I were like some of the first people to get Twitter, and so we're like, oh, we'll follow each other, and we've still been following each other and still talk occasionally. And it was because we like met on the Red versus Blue forums just through text. Like I love that. That's one of my favorite things. Like, I think it's to the point that if we ever did see each other in person, be like, nah, we're just gonna keep it like this. We are getting towards the end of this episode, to the time where we would give chat a chance to ask some questions. Is there any last points that either of you want to touch on before handing it over to chat?
I would like to touch on something, Dr. B. Can I touch on something? There's a quote that I use in a lot of the workshops that I give, and it's from a research study from Nikki that found 75% of people say their online friends are as real or more real than their real life friends, and 65% or more, depending on who you're asking, share things online that they haven't shared offline. These spaces are incredibly socially valuable, even for people who don't have, quote unquote, traditional difficulties, maybe communicating in traditional contexts. Online spaces do offer something different, and it's something very valuable.
It's true.
I will say that games have been responsible for some of the best friendships I've had, as well as some of the best memories in my life. I mentioned this to you both yesterday, that when I was a teenager and we would have these group sleepovers at my friend's house, who was also incidentally my game master, the guy who introduced me to all role-playing games, we used to have upwards of 12 to 16 person Worms Armageddon tournaments all night, and really make his dad angry because we kept waking him up. And we would just take turns sitting around the computer playing 2-person alternating Worms games until there was only one person remaining, aka me. I was a monster at that game too.
We're learning a lot about Dr. B today.
I am not nice when it comes to certain games. It's just like the nice Dr. B portion gets locked up in the back, and this slobbering, frothing at the mouth like game monster comes forth, just like
oh man, you are making me remember the LAN parties, man. So good. We did Halo LAN parties back in the day. It was so much fun. Okay, let's see what chat has been up to while we've been talking. Let's see. Babylon Ranger 2261 says, right, and calling your out-of-state relatives isn't going isn't growing up with your family. Or keeping up with your family. That's true. Like, if you don't live in the same state, you basically have an online relationship with that part of the family. That's like,
there's a word, and this is a word that the kids today don't necessarily know. Two words, technically. Pen pal.
Oh God, pen pal. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was 100% thing, but that was also not viewed as a real friendship or relationship back in the day. And like okay, here's a good one. My all my half siblings, my donor conceived siblings, we don't live in the same area, but like we talk all the time and stuff like that. Well, not as much now because I've gotten a full-time job and I'm very busy. But like we talk as much as we can and stuff like that, and are getting to know each other. And that's the only way that we're able to. And we're siblings, we're related. Yeah, no, the whole like you have to be in person, like bleh,
Look, the only way I get to talk to Dr. B is through the screen.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. I can't see you. I can't.
Well, this is just nice of Star Chaser 43 to say, in my opinion, the content is so worth the few tech issues. No worries, Trevor. Oh, thank you. Appreciate you. Let's see. This is Roland DHTG. Does the research show that varying by age? I think this is going. I'm reading them from like start of the show and stuff. Are younger people more likely to bond online than older people? Thinking about what I have observed with my children.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I haven't seen any research specifically equating it younger to older, but since people who are on the younger spectrum tend to be more technologically native, that would make logical sense to me that happens. Because even in my cohort and Dr. B, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, Trevor, but
you're 33.
Oh yeah, no, he's
okay. So you're a little younger. Okay, generally in the people in the 30s. I'm 38. It's okay. Even in my generation, who I feel like grew up with the internet, you know, I got the internet when I was middle school, early high school. Plenty of people my age do not have nothing to do with games, have nothing to do with Zoom, you know, are still muted on Zoom, and we've been in the pandemic for 2 years. So it would make sense that the younger crowd may do it more.
I really like that.
Well, I remember a statistic a couple of years it was a survey statistic a couple of years ago that proportionately those in their 60s were becoming the most rapid adopters of technology, and it was specifically to use certain programs to connect with their kids and grandkids, and that was specifically around things like FaceTime. And while the survey data, and I wish I could remember who did this survey, what they showed is that while there was more reticence on the part of their older demographics, once they were used to the technology, they rated it as just as integral to their lives as people younger.
Cool.
God, I really wish I could remember who did. It's gonna bug me.
So this next one comes from Lando CSF. What are the types of cues that would help guide the path to from bridging to bonding? We have cues in physical spaces that are often absent in digital gaming spaces.
That is absolutely true. A lot of the nonverbal cues are gone, and the funny thing is we actually make up for those. So if we're talking about going from bridging to bonding, we don't have tone of voice, for instance, if we're using text-based speech, but we do have how close is your avatar standing next to my avatar. Like you do have physical proximity cues. Like the internet games have been very good at adopting to make up for these missing links. So I think what Dr. B was saying earlier about the self-disclosure, that's a good way of measuring, because the key difference between bridging and bonding social capital is that emotional support.
And one of the things I will say is that, and this is going to be from a very autistic perspective, the structures of conversations are still there. And there's one of the ways I kind of get through things, and incidentally, so do a couple of friends of mine in the game industry who are excellent narrative designers for this reason, is because we all view those of these particular friends and I tend to view conversations transactionally and structurally. And there's certain patterns that exist. And online, there are other patterns that exist. And think about what it is when in a chat conversation, it's all related to a certain context, and somebody comes in and they just, apropos of nothing, I like pie. Do you really like pie? I like pie. And then the whole thing stops. Because they didn't contribute anything to the conversation that was going on. And so staying within a certain context, and of course there's variability and there's a certain flow, but there is there are those cues, like when somebody goes a little off topic, does the conversation follow with them?
Yeah.
And so I like to look for those structural cues.
I think another one for me is like humor is a big thing for me. And so if someone starts riffing with me after I've done a joke, I'm like, you and I can be friends much faster. And like there have been
I think
people,
that's how we met.
It might actually, we did immediately start riffing. But like, yeah, if the conversation moves away from what we're doing in the game, that to me is a type of social cue that person and I can be friends. If the only thing the person is talking about is what's happening in the game, get to this position, watch out for this thing, contributing nothing else to the conversation, I'm like, okay, you just want to do this, that's fine, I'm cool with that, whatever. But yeah, it's mainly just what the conversation is about. The next question that came in, I kind of connects to that. Reaver01 says, question, is there any suggestion for us socially awkward people to use our experiences in social gaming relationships in real life? And like, again, with the Halo thing, like it was me paying attention to what that was, like having a notepad in my head of like, that worked, that didn't work. And upon meeting Dr. B very early on, finding out that was a big thing of ADHD and autism, which made me go, So yeah, it really is paying attention to how, for me, for like how people responded to stuff, and how for me to best act to have just a good time and not just, walk in and say, I love pie.
Which is incidentally always my example for that. I'm surprised.
And you know what? I really do love pie.
So do I.
Good, baked good.
I mean, honestly, if I went in and I just randomly shouted that at people, there's going to be someone who agrees with me. No one has ever said I dislike.
There's going to be that contrarian that's going to be like, what about cake? And I'm going to be like, we're not talking about cake. We're talking about pie.
We're talking about pie.
Yeah. Big difference.
Unless you want to expand this into into a topic of desserts in general. But even that has a flow to it. That has a contextual flow. We're going from pie to cake, maybe to croissants. Either way, all baked confectionaries.
Dr. B, you're talking my love language.
Butter and gluten, baby.
I was gonna say carbs are also my love language, so we're...
There you go. Dr. Goose has a thing here.
Of course she does.
Gamer tag names are legit. The husband met me as Goose and still calls me that, though it's often Goosey, as affectionate and familiar. Him calling me by my legal name is so weird. Same is true for a lot of friends. That is really funny. I love that. God, there was, I have had a few friends who I met online that, like we would know each other's first names, but we'd still be like, just call me that. Like I would be like, you can call me Treavor. And then one of my friends was like, call me this, call me my gamer tag. And it was really funny because that person ended up moving to my city and we hung out in person several times, and like I would still call him his gamer tag and my friends were very confused.
Well, I mean, so it's a strange, it becomes a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of friends in my life that I met after I took the job at Take This. And in professional context, everybody calls me Dr. B. But, outside of that, I'm like, you can call me Raffael, or you can call me, whatever. And it felt so weird to them. Dr. B became their way of showing affection and respect.
Oh, that's 100% with me. Like I call you Dr. B all the time. Like I think I've called you Raffael like 6 times and I felt weird about it every time. It's very true. So the next question is from Monkey House. Question: video games have defined rules and preconceived barriers. So would you say our friendships are thus shaped by the demands of the marketplace on developers? or the marketplace of the I can't say words, demands of the marketplace on developers. Yeah,
No.
basically just saying how like the structure of the game kind of influences the type of friendships that we make.
No, not really, because there's the game, there's Discord, there's different elements of the game. I mean, we'll just say TLDR. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I teach people when it comes to the applied use of role-playing games is that the difference between video game RPGs and tabletop RPGs is the vastness of player agency. And as people, we have the agency to expand our social repertoire outside of the games. I mean, I use them as a jumping off point to other things. And so the idea that my friendships are limited by what somebody at BioWare puts into the programming language, no.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Prime, oh, they are Prime, but Gaming Grumpy Cloud says, not only do I want to see Dr. B play Mario Party, but I want, but I bet he's a blast with Jackbox games.
Okay. He is actually a blast with Jackbox games.
Hey,
I love playing
Mario
Jackbox.
Party as long as you don't oppose me.
Shirts. I've bought the shirts, the merch, from the TKO, the thing that he has made. Should have worn one. He's actually really fun with Jack.
Which one was it? Was it the butts one?
I have a clinical role throwback.
The Sparkles, I would like to rage.
Yes. And what was the tagline that Gragnold always, I learned it from you.
I learned it from you. This I really like this one. Carthage Bruja says, my son used to come home crying every day in 7th grade, and I told him that it would get a lot better once he found his niche of people. And gaming is one of those places you can find that niche. It's 100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yes.
Yeah. That. I mean, funny enough, like my social groups in senior year of high school was rocky and like falling apart. And there was a lot of fallouts that people had and everything like that. But I still got to come home after school and hang out with my usual online friends, and everything was fine.
Yeah. Well, think about it. You already have whittled down, the Earth's population to people who like space fantasy. You're already starting with a good group.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the increased accessibility to online platforms becomes a double-edged sword in terms of our ability to curate the people that we spend time with. Mm-hmm. On one hand, we can find like-minded people who share our values, and that can be tremendously beneficial. I mean, I've certainly known a lot of teens in my life who were exploring their identity somewhere within the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. And finding their online communities was their way of doing it, especially in small towns where they might have grown up. On the other hand, if you happen to have radicalized, harmful views, it's also easy for you to find your people that way too. I mean, like any technology, there's pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna read two more here, or actually three more here. TTRPG Gift says evil Dr. B equal Mr. V. But Counting Coup comes in with Dr. B and Mr. Hyde for Mario Party.
Yes.
But TTRPG Gifts has a suggestion to read it for the next episode, which is Champion Psychology, episode 28, Butter and Gluten, baby.
Yeah.
Also, I did want to put it here at the end. Jay, our awesome mod for the show, put in the text doc. Don't worry, Dr. B. Me and my friends are also awful when we play Mario Party. There's no mercy between us.
I can appreciate this. I can absolutely appreciate this. As long as, but this is another thing we should probably bring up just really briefly, is the idea of social contracts. And flexibility of social contracts is really important when you go into different contexts, and that ability to code switch between those either tacitly agreed upon or overtly agreed upon social contracts. And if I go into a place where I know it's going to be ruthless when it comes to Mario Party, I'm down with this. Now, if I go into a preschool and I start saying the things that I said to our mutual friend to a preschooler, I am going to get on.
You see
so
that
many
star I
parents'
just
lists.
stole? That's your soul. It's mine.
Yeah, you see that star that went out, child? That's your hopes for the future.
Yeah. See how quickly he turns that switch on?
yeah.
You don't want to play with him.
Unfortunately, that is where we're gonna have to start wrapping things up. We're going a little bit long here. Dr. Kowert, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you if they would like to do so on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter at Dr. Kowert, and you can find me on YouTube at Zeitgeist.
Perfect. Dr. B, how about you?
You can find pretty much I'm on all the things at the Dr. B. You can see it below, TheeDoctor. B as in boy. You can find me there on Twitch. You can find me there on Twitter. You can find me. I now I'm like going into a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. I think it was Walkabout.
You can find me on the Difficulty Class podcast every Friday, as well as the Champions Lore podcast or show and podcast every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games. You can also find me on Twitter at the Treavor. There is an A hiding in there. Thank you to Jay for moderating in the chat as always, and thank you to Codename Entertainment and Take This for giving us an opportunity to have these discussions. If you miss any part of the show, you can find it later as a podcast at 2 p.m. on your favorite podcast service. And if you have any suggestions for future topics you'd like us to talk about, send those into Champions of Psychology at codenameentertainment.com. For those of you that are live with us right now, be sure to come back at 1 p.m. for Bardic Inspiration, where Dylan and Jason Charles Miller will be making another awesome song. But that is going to do it for this week's show. Once again, Dr. Kowert, thank you so much. Hopefully we can have you on the show again at some point in the future. But until then, take care of yourself.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.